Welcome to Violet Connie Art. I have something a little different for you today. I'm going to start a new series based on the Aesop Fables. So first of all, these are sketches in my book before I get into exactly what I'm doing. And what I did was I did these sketches based off some of the animals in those tales. Then I took photos of my sketches, put it into Medibang Paint and put together a page so that I could illustrate one of his fables. So I decided to do this because as a child I used to read these fables that have a moral at the end, and when I was a kid we used to cover up the moral and read the story and try and guess what the moral is. And I had no idea actually that these were from a person from way back when called Aesop. And Aesop was actually a Greek slave. He was born in 620 BC and died in 564 BC at the age of 56. And he was considered to be a fabulist, but he was also a slave, and he worked for different masters across the years. I've gone a little bit into the history of Aesop, but not too much. But apparently he wasn't able to do a lot of the work that some of the slaves were able to do, because he was of it was recorded that he was of a loathsome aspect, pot-bellied, misshapen head, snub nose, swarthy, dwarfish, bandy-legged, short arms, squint-eyed, liver-lipped, and a portentous monstrosity. So apparently he was kind of disfigured, but he was really clever in the way that he put his fables together, which rose him in stature amongst the other slaves. I'm probably not getting all of this right. I did actually watch a lecture of a lady who talks about Aesop in a lot more detail, and I'm going to leave a link to that in my description below if anyone is interested in that. So I've decided to do a series of illustrations based on these Aesop tales, and the reason being is because I really enjoyed these tales when I was a child, and have just recently discovered who had written them and a wealth of knowledge online about these stories, which are copyright free at the moment because they are so old. So I'll also leave a link to the Library of Congress list of stories. I think there is around 148 stories of Aesop tales on that site. In total, for Aesop's tales, there is something like 720 Aesopic fables that he had written, but that site only has 146 of them, which is still a ginormous amount. The thing about Aesop is that a lot of the tales that he wrote are actually common sayings now, which came from his tales, and I had no idea. So the more research I've done into it, the more that I've discovered that he has had a big impact on the way that we speak and things that we say, like you give him an inch and he'll take a mile, or sour grapes. He also wrote stories such as The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and The Tortoise and the Hare, and The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, and things like that, which I didn't know were Aesop tales. So anyway, I want to get into what I'm doing for this artwork, and I want to read you the story for this particular piece that I'm doing at the moment. So as a bit of fun, I thought I will read out the story of this illustration that I've chose, which was The Old Lion and the Fox, but I'm not going to tell you what the moral of the story is. I want you to put down in the comments below after I finish reading the story what you think the moral of the story is, and then at the end of the video I will reread the story and tell you what the moral of the story is. I have rewritten this story in my own words, but I will leave a link to the original writing from the Library of Congress in the description below if you're interested in seeing that for The Old Lion and the Fox. So here's my version of The Old Lion and the Fox. There was an old lion who was growing too weak to be able to hunt for himself, so he told the other animals that he was sick and would rest in a nearby cave. The other animals were kind and would go and check on the old lion often. This was all part of the old lion's plan. When the animals came to visit, the old lion would eat the animals up. One day, the fox came to visit and stood by the entrance to the cave. "Hello, lion," greeted the fox. "How are you feeling?" "Hello, fox. Pleased to see you," greeted the old lion. "I'm indeed feeling very unwell." "I am very sorry to hear that," said the fox. "Please, come inside," urged the lion. "I will feel a little better to have your company." But the fox was clever. He replied, "I would love to keep you company, lion, but I will be staying here, for I see many footprints leading into the cave, but none that lead out again." So I want you to try and guess what the moral of the story is, what you think the moral of the story is. Leave a comment in the description below, and at the end of the video, I will read out the story again and let you know what the moral was. So now on to my artwork. I am really apologizing for the quality of the video. I had two cameras running for the first time, and I was trying to do some fancy switching between camera stuff, and I didn't actually check the settings on my top-down camera properly, and it's kind of grainy and the colors aren't right. So I tried to use as little amount of that footage as I could, but some of the side-on footage wasn't able to catch everything, so that's why I still had to use some of the top-down footage. Hopefully I improve on trying to use two cameras at once the next time I try that out. So as I showed you in the beginning of the video, I had sketched out some sketches in my sketchbook of a fox and a lion, and then I took photos of my sketch pages and I loaded them into the Medibang Paint app, and then chopped out the sketches that I thought would fit best into my composition that I had planned in my head, and then arranged them on the page to come up with this page of illustration for this particular story. So the idea was that the lion in the corner was showing him yawning, he is tired and old, and then the main story was the lion looking out towards the fox, and also the footprints across the bottom to indicate that there was footprints that were the main part of the story. Another reason I did the lion in the corner was because I also wanted the lion's face in the story as well. So if I had either the fox looking in, I would have only had the back of the head of the fox and then the front of the lion, or as I've got it here with the back of the lion and the fox on the outside. So I decided to also draw the lion in the top corner. After I had got it already on Medibang Paint, I then printed it out onto a piece of paper in the size that I want, which I chose A4, and then I traced that onto some watercolour paper, and I'm using Archer's cold press watercolour paper. I then used the Faber-Castell Artist Pitt pens in sepia. I really enjoy using the sepia pens rather than the black ones, and I think that given that these stories are from time in BC, they are quite old, so I thought it was kind of fitting to have, rather than that striking black, but to have the sepia, which also gives you kind of an old and that kind of old vintage feel, I think I'm trying to say. So I really like how this turned out. I think that there was some problems with contrast, lights and darks and values and things, but I really think that this is a cute illustration. I am also going to leave a link in the description to where you can download a blank copy of this particular illustration before I coloured it in, so that if you would like to colour it in, you are able to. And yeah, I would love to see that. So if you do, tag me on Instagram and use the hashtag #LookVioletConnie, and I will definitely have a look at that. And if I do my next video on Aesop Tales, I will show your picture in that video as well. So after I put all of the sketch onto my Archer's watercolour paper, I then went about just colouring it in. So I wanted to use kind of muted tones for this illustration, and as you can see, I've stuck mainly to reds, browns and oranges, kind of ochre colours for the entire piece, and I think that it kind of makes it look really cohesive and as one. And yeah, I used a mixture of Daniel Smith and Winsor and Newton watercolour paints for this particular illustration. Actually, before I started this, I was going to use my handmade watercolours, and then I completely forgot, and so maybe next time for the next Aesop episode in the series, I will remember to use my handmade watercolours instead of my Daniel Smith watercolours for this illustration. Oh, and also, I nearly forgot, the link in the description to the list of the Aesop tales that I found through the Library of Congress, I have left I've also put there because if anyone else wants to illustrate one of these Aesop tales and show me, I would absolutely love to see that as well, to see what other people's takes are on these particular stories. So yeah, if you're that way inclined and feel like illustrating a story, and you're also like me, someone who can't write a story to save their life, this is a nice way to be able to illustrate a story that's already there and free to use in the public domain. The other thing I did once I completed my painting was that I scanned the artwork into my computer, and then I wrote the story out onto Word and then made it into a 2-page spread for to have the text on one side and my illustration on the other. Originally the plan was to put the text on the page of the illustration in the corners, but they were not going to fit there. So, and I think it also looked better to have it on a separate page, and in the little space beside the little footprints down the bottom, I left that there also to put the moral of the story in after I had completed the artwork. So I'm going to show a picture of that complete setup after I finished painting. I also created my own font, so I wanted to use my own handwriting to write out the story, and so you'll also see that at the end as well. I used a website called Calligrapher, so if anybody else is interested in creating their own font, the website's free to use, and I will leave a link to that below in the description. So I'm nearing the end of the video now. I'm not actually going to read out the story again like I said in the beginning because it's getting very close to the end, but did anyone guess it? The moral of the story is learn from the misfortune of others. So here is my double-page spread of my story with my handwriting using the Calligrapher app to make my own font, and then also my illustration on the other side with the moral of the story down the bottom on the page. Thanks so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.